Let's turn to Genesis chapter 32, and something really different is happening to me concerning this study. I've been preaching about the characteristics on Sunday morning, about the characteristics of a godly character, and I'm going to be preaching on discipline today, the second point in the after service. But when I started to study about Jacob, I realized that God was starting to infiltrate my spirit, that I'm going to be preaching about something today that I should be teaching about, and should be teaching you about. So I'm going to get to a certain spot in our study today, and then I'm going to skip. I'm going to skip because Sunday morning's message, this morning's message, is exactly what that is. So you'll follow that as we go along. Let me continue on Genesis chapter 32 and show you that, just review for you a little bit and show you this. And if I can get this to come up, I'm not sure where that is. But it would be nice if it came up. Hello. There we go. Thank you. Let me put that on there the right way. Zoom in a little bit. You remember the four spiritual phases to our growth, or as parallel to Jacob. You remember that saving phase, chapter 28. The subduing phase, chapter 29 to 32, we are at the end of the subduing phase, and I think we all need to know what that is, because after we're subdued, then there's the separating phase, and we're going to talk about chapter 33 and 34, and then finally the sanctifying phase, why we're really saved, what's God's intention for us. Now, we may be understanding that all the way down the line, but it becomes evident in Jacob's life in chapter 35. You and I are in one of these four stages in our Christian growth right now. Hopefully, we can place ourselves. Remember, these are the longest periods of time that it takes, the subduing phase and the separating phase. And so we last left Jacob in the middle of chapter 32. And I haven't done this for a while for you, so I've done this to give you a little bit of an outline and show you where we are and help you in what we've gone over so far. Whoa. This is how God stopped Jacob. It's the last part of the subduing phase. The very last part of the subduing phase is that God has to stop us. You know, we have a tendency to keep going on our own, but God has got to stop us. And so He's going to stop Jacob, and we're going to be in that spot right now. We've gone from chapter 31 showing that his old goals were challenged. And then we went to his old goals were, challenged. This one should be his old gods were challenged. It goes on and it shows that his old grudges were challenged. And of course today we are at the spot where his old guilt was challenged. He's beating Esau. Jacob's confrontation from God. Remember chapter 32 verses 1 and 2? That's when the angels were with him. He had a double camp. And now today we're going to pick it up with Jacob's confusion about God. Because even though God was with him, he had a little bit of a problem a little bit of a confusion with God. As a matter of fact, we did a little bit of that last week. We told you how Jacob was praying to God, and his prayer showed a little bit of confusion because he wasn't really sure how to approach God. We see that in purposes of God he prayed, the providence of God, the protection of God, and then finally the promises of God. But Jacob's having a little bit of trouble. He's having a little bit of trouble from the heaven to earth side. He is realizing that he has this God that's all-powerful, just like we realize. This God that can answer his prayers, just like we realize. But he also realizes that he's got to put shoe leather to it, and he knows that as he walks his life every day, that it gets real hard for him to narrow the gap between his reality on life and his God. How many know what I'm talking about? There's a gap there, and to get God to be very, very evident in our lives every single moment is a real challenge for us, because we are not in heaven. Somebody say amen. If you think earth is heaven, I want to talk to you later on. Look at chapter 32, verse 13. Let me show you Jacob's confusion about God. Verse 13, he says, "And he lodged there that same night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother." And I want to stop there for a moment and tell you that in Genesis chapter 32, verse 13, and again, let me remind you that this morning's service is going to be centered around Jacob. Eventually I'm going to get to Jacob after I read from Galatians. We're going to read from chapter 32 of Genesis. God has just been impressing on my heart about this building characteristic called discipline, and this is exactly what God's doing in Jacob's life. I don't want to preach my message to you this morning, but I do want to tell you about Jacob. In Genesis chapter 32, he is starting to go back to these old grudges. He has Esau. Last time he left Esau was 20 years prior. And when he left Esau, Esau had a threat off of his lips. The very last words that Jacob heard from Esau was, and I'll paraphrase, "I'm going to kill you. Whether it takes me a year, whether it takes me 10 years, as soon as Dad's dead, you're dead." And that's what he said to him. He said, you are history, and now I don't want to see your face. I'm going to kill you. And so that was his last words that he heard from Esau. And he is in a, 20 years can get you to think about a lot of things. 20 minutes can get you to think about a lot of things. But for 20 years, he has had that in the back of his mind. It was okay when he was in Haran, Padan Aram, which was about 400 miles away. But now it's getting closer and closer. In fact, he is going into Esau's territory, Edom. We showed you that. And so he is going to have to face his brother. We see that he does some strange things when he starts to come to face his brother. Remember, his name means trickster. And his name means supplanter. It means if I can get away with something, I'm going to get away with something. How many of you have kids like that? I think it's the story of childhood. It's that you draw a line and they just keep moving that line on you, don't they? Well, we are the children of God, and sometimes we have a tendency to try to move the line that God's drawn. Sometimes we have a tendency to try to push the limit, to get away with whatever we can. I get it every time people come up to me and say, Pastor, is it okay for me to? And then they give me this. The reason they're asking that is it's not okay for them to do it. How many know what I'm talking about? You would never ask it. Nobody comes to me and says, Pastor, is it okay for me to pray? Nobody ever comes to me and says, Pastor, is it okay for me to fast? They ask things that there's a little question about. It's how close can I get to this line? That's our human nature. God, where do I really have to go here? How far can I go over here? Well, I think that Jacob would like to avoid problems just like you and I do. Most of us do not like confrontation. Jacob is getting, and especially when you get older, how many of you recognize that when you get older, you really don't want to fight as much as you used to fight? How many know that your nature changes? Yes. I remember my mother, when I was growing up, my mother could yell, and the cats in the neighborhood would run away. Now that lady, she has grandchildren, and I've never heard her yell. I asked her what's wrong with her the other day. She said, well, you get older. And I said, I understand, I realize it. Well, Jacob is going to try to maneuver Esau to his advantage by surrendering all of his wealth and his family to his elder brother. He's a rationalist. He's a great pragmatist. He's thinking, well, if my life's in danger, then what does it matter that I have all this wealth and this family? If I die, I'm not going to be able to appreciate it anyway, so I might as well just give it up. And it's a real shrewd thought. He's saying, I want my life. The most important thing to us is not what we own. The most important thing to us is our life. Sometimes self-preservation is even stronger than preserving people that are around you. Now, I understand as being Christians that we want to lay down our lives for others, but Jacob is still working on his salvation, if you will, or on his righteousness. And he would even sacrifice his family at this point just so that he can go away with his life. Remember, he is a self-preserver. That's what he did when he tried to steal the birthright. That's what he did with Laban. He's been a fighter. He's been a look out for number one because nobody else is going to look out for you. And so he is almost surrendering everything to him. Big brother Esau is coming, and Jacob was fearing for his life. Kind of reminds me of this, and I'm going to teach you something today. This is from the dictionary, and this is something that you're going to just go away with a tremendous amount of knowledge today. You're going to be able to impress all your friends. This is from the dictionary, and this is in the letter Q. This is straight from the Webster's Dictionary. I want you to look at this thing that I have underlined. See this word right there? Can everybody read that? Quisling. What does it say? It's a traitor who serves as the puppet of the enemy occupying his country. Quisling. It's a regular word in the alphabet under the letter Q. Let me teach you something. That word was not there prior to 1945. Does anybody know why that word is there now? Anybody have any idea?
Israel.
No, it's not Israel. It's good. Yeah.
He was the ruler of Norway, I believe, and he rented his country to the Germans.
That is excellent. Here's what Quisling was. When I was growing up and I was studying history and I was in college, there was a word. This word is now part of our English language. You can call somebody a Quisling, meaning they're a traitor to their own countrymen. And in fact, that's exactly what he was. When Hitler was doing his spread over Western Europe, he was going into Denmark and Poland. He wanted to take Norway. And as he marched into Norway, he set up a ruler by the name of Vadon Quisling. And he put him in there, and he was a puppet. What he did is he sold out Norway to Hitler. He was a traitor to his own people. And so what was happening was Quisling's name became synonymous with somebody who's a traitor. Now today, instead of a proper name, we can look up in the letter underneath the alphabet in Q, and we can find the name Quisling. Why am I telling you that? Because did you ever hear somebody say, if you look up coward in the dictionary, you'll see my picture under it? If you look up traitor in the dictionary, you'll see Quisling's picture under it. That is accurate. Why am I telling you that? Because Jacob has been branded already by his own life. He is someone who is a sneak. He is someone who is a finagler. He is somebody who's trying to get away with something. He's looking for his own advantage. If he can cut a corner for himself, he's going to do it. And so he has that nature. And you remember, we're talking about God subduing him. How many of you have a quirk to your nature that you wish God would just get rid of? I mean, we all can raise our hands. God is working on it. So he is taking off the edges. Well, we all say we want God to get rid of it, but how do you want God to get rid of it? Here's how we want God to get rid of our problems. We want to go to sleep one night. We want to wake up without that part of us. That's not the way it's going to work. You're going to have a situation come up and face you face to face, and you're going to have to face that nature. What happens is God sets things up in our life because how many know He cares about our spirits more than He cares about your body, by the way. And He sets things up in our life to give us another opportunity to move in the way that we normally would with that negative characteristic trait. He gives us something that brings that out again. And usually we fail every time it comes. How many of you have failed in the same way over and over and over and over? And how many of you have to face that same, how many of you know you're going to face it again? That's God allowing you to face that because He wants you to overcome that. And so Jacob is looking to overcome this tremendous character flaw that he has. His character flaw is he loves God with all of his heart. Just like we do. He has a great life in his relationship with God. But there's this one problem he has that's been messing him up for the last 20 years. Whenever he gets into a tight spot, he thinks about his own neck. And it's not going to happen. God wants to perfect him. He wants to work something out. He wants to use him. And so there's a character flaw that he has that he's got to get out. So he meets Laban. And right after he's done with Laban, he meets Esau. And so he's going to do the same thing with Esau that he did with Laban, because it's his nature. And how many of you know that God doesn't want necessarily your nature in you, but He wants His nature? You know, there are some people that are runners. They come up with a problem and they run. They dart. They bolt. And when God, and it seems they come to me sometimes in counsel, I say, Pastor, why do I always have these problems? Why do they always come up to me and tell me, don't you understand? God's getting you to the point where you've not reacted the right way to them in the past. So you're going to always have those problems until you react the right way to it. Then you will stop having those problems because God wants to perfect your nature. And so we see that Jacob is at that spot. He's facing big bad Esau. He hasn't seen him in a long time. You remember Esau? He's the guy that can eat the bark off of a tree. He's a naturalist. He's somebody who would fight and hunt for his living. He's very proficient with the arrow. He's a great hunter. He is a fearsome person. You remember Jacob. Jacob, believe it or not, is really not fearsome. He's the little kind of guy that really wouldn't say anything to your face, but behind your back would plot all against you. We've all known guys like that, haven't we? And so he's not going to go confrontation straight to Esau. He never has, and he won't now. So what he does is he starts to do some really interesting things. He was looking at appeasing Esau. He has tried everything. He's tried reconciliation. He's tried a whole bunch of different things. Now he's going to try consolation. He's tried prayer. Look at 32. We're going to read from verses 13 to 23, and I'm going to go all the way down it just to show you what he's doing. And he lodged there. Let me reread 13. And he lodged there that same night. And he's at the Jabbok River now. He's at a fork of a river. He can't go any further. And he has just sent messengers out. And the messengers came back to his brother Esau, saying, "I'm here. Tell my Lord, I'm here. I'm his servant." And he's trying to appease him. No response from Esau. The servants come back and say, "Your brother's here with 400 men." Which makes him go into panic mode number 3. It says, "And he lodged there that night, and took of that which came to his hand a present for Esau his brother." Notice that word present. 200 she-goats, 20 he-goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milch camels, with their colts, 40 kine, and 10 bulls, 20 she-asses, and 10 foals. And he delivered them into the hand of the servants, every drove by themselves, and said unto his servants, "Pass over before me, and put a space between drove and drove." And he commanded the foremost, saying, "When Esau my brother meets thee, and asks thee, saying, Whose art thou? And whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, They be thy servant Jacob's." Now remember, Esau is having his own flocks, and he has his own pasture land. So when he sees all these flocks coming, he's going to ask, "What do you do with these things? Why are they on my property? Why are you bringing them here? You're not trying to eat my grasses, are you? You're not trying to get..." And so he says, when my brother Esau sees you, tell him that these are not somebody that's trying to encroach on him. These are a present to him. Now watch. And he commanded, verse 17, the foremost, saying, "When Esau my brother meets thee, and asks thee, saying, Whose art thou? And whither goest thou? And whose are these before thee? Then thou shalt say, They be thy servant Jacob's. It is a present sent unto my lord Esau, and behold, also he is behind us. So Jacob's saying, listen, when I send these droves, he's sending a wave offering. He's sending he's sending a bribe. Money talks. You can't get any tickets to the Alabama-Tennessee game. I guarantee if you put $50 in somebody's hand the right way, you'll get a ticket. How many know money talks? I'm not condoning that. I'm just telling you that money talks. You want your speeding ticket paid? You can get it paid. How many understand what world we live in? We live in a very greedy world. Money talks. And you can get somebody's anger appeased. The Bible says in Proverbs, give an angry man a gift. Why would it say that? Because you'll take away his anger. People will forget about those big causes they have if you pad their pockets. I mean, that's the way now. Hopefully that's not us. But people will. And so Jacob knows that. He's going to appease. He's giving a bribe, or what seems like a bribe, to his brother Esau. Look at verse 19. And so commanded he the second and the third, and all that followed the drove, saying, on this manner shall ye speak unto Esau when ye find him. And he's given him a wave offering. We believe there's about 5 offerings he's given. And say ye moreover, behold, thy servant Jacob is behind us, for he said, I will appease him with the present that goeth before me, and afterward I will see his face. Peradventure he will accept of me. So went the present over before him, and himself lodged that night in the company. And he arose up that night, and took his 2 wives, and his 2 women servants, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. Now, let me remind you that he has not fulfilled his purpose in God's hand yet. Let me remind you that Jacob only has 11 sons at this point. There is one more son that needs to be born that is going to be instrumental in the story of the Hebrews, in the story of the Israelites. His name is Benjamin, and he's going to be very instrumental. As a matter of fact, without Benjamin, we would not get the migration of the Israelites down into Egypt, and consequently Moses bringing them back out. That's another story. But let me just tell you what he's doing. Jacob has come to the point of meeting his brother Esau. Esau has a reputation for cruelty. Lest he come and smite me for the mother with children. Remember that? So he starts to do this consolation. He sends them in droves. He sends actually 5 droves. It's here where the bribe becomes a forerunner to something else that I'm going to tell you about. But let me show you the bribe. 5 droves. I like this chart that we made up. We get so creative, don't we? 200 she-goats. 20 he-goats. That's one set. Does anybody know why he's sending this? This is a starter kit for wealth. It's a starter kit. If I wanted to start somebody on a stamp collection, I'd give them a couple stamps here and a couple stamps there. Starter kit. If I want to start them on a coin collection, I'd give them a couple Indian head pennies, and I'd give them a couple B nickels or a couple Mercury head dimes. This is a starter kit. And he knows it. This is a starter kit for wealth. If Esau accepts this, he will be a very wealthy man. Because 20 he-goats, and 200 she-goats. Does anybody have any idea why 20 he-goats and 200 she-goats? Anyone? Come on, think a little bit. Why is he sending those? They're a breeder. It's a breeder pack. If you went into Walmart today and said, "Hey, I want to start a flock and get rich. Can you give me a breeder pack?" They say, "Yeah, we got 200 she-goats and 20 he-goats." That's the correct amount of goats that one he-goat needs to breed she-goats. One he-goat will need 10 she-goats, and he can successfully breed with 10. It usually breaks down less than 10. Jacob is extremely smart. You don't want to have any more than 20 because the fights will start killing some of the goats. They will get to that point. So 20 is the right number. He is giving 20 he-goats and 200 she-goats. Now watch. 200 ewes, or female sheep, and 20 rams. Anybody know why? It's the same reason. He knows that's exactly how much you need. It's manageable, and you are going to get rich quick. If you have this many, you're going to get rich quick. How many of you have ever bred dogs or cats? When you do that, there's a certain cycle that you use. Sometimes you breed one cycle, and then you leave it off, and then you breed again. It's like planting crops in soil and soil erosion. You plant one crop. He's doing this because at any given time, all through the year, he's going to have litters. He's going to have litters of all these things. Every single month, they're going to start producing. So he will always have something coming. He's starting them out. He gives him 30 milch camels. The word milch there is nursing mothers. And 30 of their colts. Now, the reason why he does that because camels take a longer time in gestation. And so the best thing you can have with a camel is he's cutting out the waiting period. I remember when we bought a horse for Cheryl. Cheryl loved horses, and I bought 3 of them, as a matter of fact, at one time. Somebody said to me, "You must really love horses." I said, "No, I love my wife. I don't like horses at all." Horses, either somebody's making money on them or somebody's losing money on them. And so I remember when one of our horses got pregnant. And I went, "That's great. I'm finally going to make some money on this horse." Well, they told me how long it takes for them to deliver a colt. 11 months. I said, "Could it be like chickens, 21 days? Let's turn this thing over." 11 months. How would you like to be pregnant for 11 months, lady? Well, that's the reason why he does this, because camels have a long gestation period. And so instead of him, and rams and sheep don't. So instead of him saying, "Oh, these are useless camels," he gives them camels with their young colts. They are very, very rare to have the mothers and their colts. He probably drained his flocks to do this. 30 nursing mothers and 30 colts, which was an extremely wealthy type of thing that he gave. You know, if you really read the Bible, you can really find out a lot of things. You know that? But you really got to read it. You really have to study it. He goes on and he does this. He gives 40 kine, that's female cows, and 10 bulls. Same reason. 1 bull per 4 cows is really a great ratio. If you're ever a farmer, this is probably more manageable than anything else. Also, 20 she-asses, female donkeys, and 10 foals. And again, another reason why is because you're going to be using those donkeys for beasts of burden, not necessarily for breeding. So he gives you the beasts of burden, but he also gives you the young ones so that you have a crop coming up, so to speak. And then what Jacob was doing, he was giving Esau a breeder kit for wealth and prosperity. He knew exactly what he was doing. A how to get rich quick package that really worked. Was it a bribe? Was it a bribe?
Yeah.
Okay. It was a bribe. But I got to be honest with you. The Bible is not given out at this point. You know that Moses has not written the first 5 books of the Bible at this point. They can't open up a Torah. They can't open up anything. There's no written word of God's word. So they're following God. And this is the predecessor to what we would call, Leviticus would call, a trespass offering. So a bribe, here's the difference between a bribe and a trespass offering. A bribe says, "I want my neck saved." It's a one-way thing. It's, "I'll give you this, but I want my neck saved." A trespass offering says, "When I give you this, you will give me something better in return." See, in Leviticus, we're told about the trespass offering. By the way, it's mentioned in groups of 5 sometimes. A wave offering. 5 times the Israelites would wave the offering. A drove offering would be a repetition. We see in Leviticus chapter 5, we see in Leviticus chapter 23, we see a whole bunch of different offerings, trespass offerings. As a matter of fact, let's turn there. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 5, verses 6 and 7. Now remember, this is not written yet. Genesis, even though we're reading about Jacob, it will not be written until Moses writes it after the Exodus, or during the Exodus. But if you look at Leviticus chapter 5, there's no word for Jacob to follow trespass offering. He doesn't know that word, yet it will become a law, the Levitical law, and the law of Moses, part of the law of Moses in the future. But if you look at Leviticus chapter 5, let's look at verses 6 and 7. "And he shall bring his trespass offering unto the Lord for his sin, which he has sinned. A female from the flock, a lamb or a kid of the goats, for a sin offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him concerning his sin. And if he be not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring for his trespass, which he has committed, 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons unto the Lord. One for a sin offering, the other for a burnt offering." And so in Leviticus we have this series of laws and of offerings, and sometimes we get a little bit confused with them. And how do I know what to give? Do I give a lamb? Do I give a goat? Do I give this? Do I give that? Matter of fact, this offering would be mentioned again in the New Testament, because when they would present Jesus to the priest, to Zechariah, to be circumcised on the 8th day, Mary and Joseph, being poor, would give 2 turtle doves. I heard somebody preaching not too long ago saying how Jesus came from an extremely rich family. It was a man that was preaching prosperity. And he says, we really undermine Jesus. He came from an extremely rich family. He was very, very wealthy. And I really wish people would start reading their Bibles before they preach. Because his mother and father could not afford a ram or a lamb. They brought 2 turtle doves. And so that proves to you what it is. The Bible says if you can't afford a ram, you bring turtle doves. Well, this trespass offering is an appeasement. Why did God require people to sacrifice things? Did you ever wonder about that? I mean, why in the world would God require people to sacrifice things? Bulls and goats and turtle doves. I mean, if you were in the tabernacle in the Old Testament, you would see the blood flow constantly. You would have the smell of flesh in your nostrils every single day you woke up. Did you ever smell flesh burning? I mean, it was a constant. If you ever go to Israel with us, or if you go by yourself, and you go into what's now the Dome of the Rock. In the middle of the Dome of the Rock is a huge rock. The dome is built over a rock, built in 691 AD by the Muslim Turks. And it's an abomination really over the site. They believe that Abraham sacrificed Ishmael on that rock, or offered Ishmael. Of course, the Bible tells us that Abraham offered Isaac on that site. That is actually Moriah. And it's a chain of Golgotha. It goes this way, and it actually goes all the way around. It's one part of Moriah, Mount Moriah. It's very close to Golgotha, and it was one chain at one time. The Romans came, and they excavated in between that mountain and used it to build a city. But it was one chain. So all along that chain was Golgotha, and the Dome of the Rock is sitting on top of a rock. It's around the rock, and the rock is huge. When you go in it, it's probably about the size of, from that wall to this wall. Lisa, you've been there. You probably remember the size of it. From maybe the door over to here, and there's this huge, ornate dome put around it, which is a Muslim mosque. When you go inside, there is a hole in the middle of it. And there are grooves that go down. And those grooves are blood grooves. That hole, if that was the spot, and I believe it was, then that means that millions of lambs were killed on that spot. Millions. The blood would run down the hole. It would run down into the grooves, and there are grooves everywhere. And it would go underneath the subterranean passages, which I know they're there because I've been there. I've been under there. Don't ask me how I got there, but I was under there. And then that drops off into the Cedron, or the Kidron Valley, into the river. And so that river during the Passover time would run red. It would be full of lamb's blood. As a matter of fact, there's a part in Scripture that says, "Who is this with dyed garments from Bozran that crosses the Cedron?" It's back, I think, in Isaiah. And it's talking about Jesus. It's talking about the Messiah. When he crossed that river, and he had to cross it to get to Gethsemane the night before he died, his garments would literally have been stained red with blood on the bottom, because he had to cross. It was during Passover. He had to cross a time when they were sacrificing millions of lambs. If you were a Jew and you were coming into the city making your pilgrimage, which you would do, you would bring a lamb with you. You would bring a goat with you, or you would bring turtle doves with you. If you didn't want to transport them, you would buy them at the temple. Remember the money changers? What the money changers did was this. This is why Jesus got so upset with it. You would come in from far away. You'd want to have your sacrifice for Passover. The priest would sacrifice it. You would buy it. You'd give it to the priest, and he would sacrifice it, atoning for your sin and the sins of your family. It was the Passover, one lamb for a family. So all of your family would now sacrifice a lamb. Instead of eating it, they would sacrifice it. And as they sacrificed that lamb, you may eat another lamb somewhere down the line, but you would sacrifice one lamb for a sin offering. And when the Day of Atonement came, the high priest didn't just kill one lamb. They killed millions of lambs that week. And so it was a great money-making scheme. If you came in and you bought a sheep, there were sheep pens all over the Holy of Holies, around the Holy of Holies, the outside, not the Holy of Holies, but the outside of the courtyard. There were sheep pens and goat pens. You came, brought your money. First of all, the first place you got ripped off is the exchangers. They would take your money from Parthian or your money from Africa, and they would not give you the right exchange rate. They'd cheat you. And so that was the money changers. They're changing your money into the currency of Jerusalem, which was Herodian coins. And so they would cheat you. Then the next thing they do is they rip you off by selling you a lamb or a sheep that was higher prices. How many of you ever stopped for gas along the interstate? How many of you know that you go a couple miles in, if you can find a gas station, it's going to be cheaper? Well, there ain't a whole lot of places you can go once you're on the temple to find any other sheep. They're drained. And so they charge you too much. Now here's the third way they ripped you off. That sheep many times would be recycled. They would, if they were supposed to kill 3 million of them, because 3 million came, they may have killed 2 million. And they may have killed 1 million of them. They may have killed a couple 100,000. They would have brought their sheep right back out and kept selling them. So that's why Jesus got so upset. That's why Jesus overthrew the money changers, because it was a scam. And you couldn't tell how many they were killing because they were in the Holy of Holies. They were in a spot that was holy. So you couldn't tell how many they were killing. There was no way you can get in there. And so it was a huge scam Kind of reminds me of religion today, doesn't it? Send your money and your prayer requests, and I'll lay on them and pray and make sure that God gets through. It's the same thing. Things don't change. Human nature doesn't change. Jesus would upset the money changers of religion today, just like he did before.
Amen.
I don't know why I told you all that, other than to tell you that Jacob is giving, you know why. Jacob is giving an offering. Now, let me be real cautious here. He has it in the back of his mind that if I give this, then I'll change Esau's mind, appease him, and he won't kill me. His offering could be the predecessor to a trespass offering. But we got to be very careful when we give something to God. Let me tell you why. If he thinks that his offering is going to keep him from being slain, all he's trying to do is bribe his brother. If we think we give money in the offering so that God can give us money back, all we're trying to do is bribe God.
That's right.
If we think, well, God, if I give this, then I know you'll give this back. Even if that's true, which it is, that's bribery. That's you looking to change God's hand by you doing something. That is not the reason why we give. A real trespass offering never expects anything in return. A real trespass offering knows something comes back, but they never expect it in return. Now, why do I say that? Because I don't want you to cheat yourself out of giving. I want you to give this way. I want you to give just saying, God, this is yours. Forget about it. Once you gave it, it's God's. Then you better get ready to be blessed. Not because you thought you had to give it and God's going to bless you, but because of the intent of your heart. See, all the Old Testament trespass offering was a predecessor to the greatest gift God would ever give us. Jesus, His Son. They all laid the foundation for Jesus to come. So what we see here in Jacob's life is we see him getting real close to taking some of his natural thoughts and switching them to godly thoughts. This will become the trespass offering. I would love to take churches and put them in a seminar where I could tell them, listen, I want to take your natural thoughts of why you come to church and change them to godly thoughts. Most people come to church and get saved because they don't want to go to hell. I really like to change that on people. I don't fear going to hell. You know you're not going to go to hell if you're saved. But that's not the reason why you get saved. If you get saved only because you want to get out of hell, we're going to miss something down the line somewhere. We're going to miss everything down the line. Getting out of hell is just a great thing that God does for us, that He keeps us saved in Him. But there's so much more to salvation. Salvation is so much richer than one aspect of just getting out of hell. I mean, that is not the reason why people should get saved. The reason why people should get saved is because someone died for you that you didn't even know. Someone died. It was the greatest act of love that you and I could ever have had. Yeah. And so our intentions and our motivations have to change. I wish I could tell people about why they should go to church. I wish I could tell them that you don't go to church because you missed 3 weeks in a row and you feel real guilty now because you haven't been there. That's not the motivating reason to go to church. That's like somebody coming and visiting me from my family saying, well, I haven't visited you in a year and I was starting to feel a little guilty, so I wanted to come and see you. No, I want people to come because they love me. I want them to come as often as they want to if they love me. I wish I could change the motivation about people. I wish I could change their motivation of why they give. I wish I could let them know, listen, it is greater to give than to receive. If you get nothing back, you're such a great thing in giving. My mother proved that to me. My mother has been a giver her entire life. This lady has given more things away than I've ever seen. She has absolutely nothing to her name. She's given everything she's had away. She's given to my brother, my sister, to her relatives. I've never known her to keep anything long. I'd buy her a present, she wouldn't keep it, she'd give it away to somebody. But she has a happy and a prosperous life. And I wish people would understand that. I wish people would understand what it means to have an authority over their life. That a pastor or someone or a husband is really a covering. It's not somebody, if you get the right one, it's not somebody who wants to put their thumb on you and squash you into the ground. It's somebody who wants to elevate you. I'm a covering for my children. I would never hurt my children. I wish people would know that. Maybe it's the pastor's fault, and unfortunately for many times it is. But I wish people would understand what a pastor was. The honor that would be due to that covering. You know, there's so many different motivations that bring us into church sometimes. And it's really not good. I wish we realized what it means when we say to love our enemies. You know, I heard somebody say one time, Pastor, I have this enemy, and they came to counsel with me. Said, I have this enemy, and I want you to pray that we heap coals of fire on their head and consume them. And you heard me teach it. I said, well, I'll pray that we heap coals of fire on their head, but I got to tell you what that means. See, in the Mideast, they didn't have electricity or gas heaters. And so what happened was they had a hearth and they had a fire. It kept their family warm in winter. And in the Middle East, in Israel, it gets pretty cold. It gets about as cold as it does in upstate Tennessee in the winter. And they get some freezing spots. And if your fire went out, your family could die. I mean, your little ones could die. It would be hypothermia. And so what you do is you go to your neighbor's house and you'd ask him if you can have some fire. You don't want necessarily to go and start a fire and take all that time with the kindling. You want some hot coals. And so what they would do is they would take a pot, like they do in the Middle East. They carry everything on their heads. If you've ever been there, especially in some of the more remote areas, I've seen people walking around with couches on their head. I don't know how they've done that, but they'll carry, and they put coals in this bucket, and they would carry it back to hot coals, and they carry it back to their fire in their house so that they had heat. So the Bible says, heap coals on your enemy's head. Heap them so that they don't have to go back there and think, oh, the coals went out. That is an act of mercy. That's not an act of hatred. It's an act of mercy. Give them everything you have. Heap coals of fire on their head. And so I told the person, I said, well, I'll certainly pray that, but let me tell you what it's like. And they said, well, I'm really not sure I want to pray that. And I said, you need to start loving your enemy. So what am I telling you this? I'm telling you that we're in a very critical spot in Jacob's life. He's ready to be subdued. This morning I'm going to talk about discipline, and I want to give you a little precedent of where I'm going here. I can't finish this chapter for you today. I can't finish it right now because I'm going to finish it today. I'm going to finish it in the after service. But what we're seeing here is we're seeing a predecessor to the trespass offering. Why is God allowing Jacob to go through this thing? Well, we know we have a free will, but why isn't he stopping him? Why isn't he giving him a dream or speaking to him or telling him something? Why isn't he just arresting him and saying, Jacob, wait a second, you're going through it again. You've just done the same stuff with Laban for the last 20 years, and you're doing it again. Well, why doesn't he? He does. He stops him. It's one of the rare times you'll find God poking through the spirit world in physical form and stopping someone. Matter of fact, he subdues him all by himself. And he does something. You see, God is limited, and he limits himself. Why did you say that, Pastor? Well, he is. He limits himself. He's limitless, but he limits himself. If we have a free will, then God has put you at a spot where he must not and cannot alter that free will. Now, he could put things in your life to guide you and guard you. My children have a free will. I went down to share something with you. I went down to Tuscaloosa yesterday and to visit my son. Mark loves us when we come down. He can't come home. He loves us to come down anytime. He's been begging me all week to come down and see him. I took his two sisters with me, and we went out to eat, and we just had a great time. He's living with a bunch of Christian guys. Bill, I think you've been down there. They go out and witness. They do a whole bunch of stuff. And love God with all their hearts, and I'm really excited about it. But I was pulling away, and it was hard for us to leave. We're a real close family. It was just hard for us to leave. It was about 10 o'clock. Of course, we were setting the clocks back, and so everybody was telling me that I had an extra hour. I was just feeling those old eyelids start to close. And his sisters came out, and a real personal thing, and they were walking in the road, the one-way road, and they were all hugging each other, and just walking, hugging each other, and just loving on each other. And I thought, Cheryl and I were sitting in the car and said, how in the world did this ever happen? They just cared about each other and just loved each other, kissed each other, crying. I mean, it's everybody comes home every other weekend. I'm not really sure why they do that, but we got in the car and Cassie said, man, I hate to leave that guy. She said, I really love him. And I looked at it and I said, God, what a blessing to see these kids just love each other like this. What a blessing to see this thing going on to such a point where they can sow into each other's lives. And I realized that God's done something in every one of their lives. I realized that. Did he come and appear to everyone, to all of them? No, he hasn't. He has somehow brought his word into their lives. Are they the greatest kids in the world and they never do anything wrong? No, I wouldn't tell you that either. They're human beings like you and I. They get on my nerves lots of times. But man, there's lots of times they give me a great feeling of joy. And I realized at that moment that I did not have to inject anything into the situation. You ever around somebody and you're so excited about it that you don't have to say a thing? As a matter of fact, if you said something, you'd ruin it. Most of the time, God allows us to have our free will and do whatever we want to do. And He gives us our free will. But every now and then, when that doesn't happen, when that scenario doesn't happen, you may see the presence of God come down boldly in your life somehow. Jacob is not changing. He is going through, he's running through people, he's running through emotions, he's trusting God, but he's not changing. He would be a perfect person that's in church, whether a pastor, a board member, or somebody sitting in a pew, who is listening over and over and over and over again, who's worshiping over and over, but he's going out and doing the exact same thing. It's just changing the personnel. It's not the scenario of him walking down the street arm in arm with somebody. It's not happening for him. So God's got to poke through. He will come in. It's called the Christophany. You'll hear about it in the after service. It's Christ in the Old Testament. Jesus will come this night. Jacob will go to bed. He will go to bed and he will be subdued in one single night. What he missed for 20 years. For 20 years, and he made some progress. But what he missed for 20 years will be changed in one single night. Let me tell you why I believe that happens. And it's my own opinion. You can disagree with this if you want. You can send me cards and letters, and you're welcome to do that. I don't think Jacob was ever going to change. I just think he was too ingrained. Did you ever meet somebody that you thought, man, they're never going to change? Well, thank God they do. Thank God we have grace. But I don't think Jacob was going to change. I don't think you and I understand who Jacob was. You talk about somebody who's dogmatic and wants his own will. This was Jacob. This man was not listening to anything. And if he wanted to believe in God, it was on his terms. If he wanted to live, if he wanted to put God on a shelf, he put him on a shelf. But God had to change Jacob. It had to happen. Even when God pokes through, he allows Jacob's free will to overrun him. It's the most amazing thing you're ever going to read. We're going to read it this morning. But even when he pokes through, you would think that God could wrestle somebody down, wouldn't you? I mean, if God appeared to you in the night, don't you think he'd be able to pin you to the bed? I mean, think it'd be no problem. I mean, think God could KO you whenever he wants to. He doesn't. He lets Jacob win. A real interesting scripture. Because you know why? Jacob always wanted to win. So God gave him what he wanted. But he comes away from it totally different. He subdues him. And it gets to the point where Jacob will always remember that night. And believe it or not, it'll change him forever. Jacob will start to change immediately after that. Now, you'll see some things still in his life, but he'll start to change. He'll remember that night. You and I, why am I telling you all this? Because you and I won't be able to get to say this later on, you and I are going to be able sooner or later, and you need to do this, to point to a spot in your life where God changed you. I can. I know a spot. Now, let me tell you something. I'm changing every day. I need more of God every day, just like you do. But I remember a night. Sometimes we call it salvation. I remember a day that, man, God wrestled me down. How many of you remember a day like that? Yes. You don't ever, ever, ever want to forget that day. Because what you went into that day with before God wrestled you is what you're going to have to be subdued from after you come out of it. You know what I'm talking about? See, when I went into that day, I was the same type of angry young man with all the emotions and wanting to get even with people. That was the same man that came out of salvation. Oh, I understand that all my sins were gone. But how many of you know that the nature that brought all my sin up was still there? Yeah. And I had to be subdued from that moment on. Now, I tell people this. When I got saved, my sins were like a 20-lane highway. And the night I got saved, it immediately broke down to 10 lanes. How many know there was still traffic going on those 10 lanes? I still had some problems. I remember the night I got saved, and if you know my testimony, you'll know this. I had 5 pounds of cocaine in my car. Underneath, I was running it from Penn State up to northeastern Pennsylvania to sell it. And I didn't forget about it. It was just in there. And it was underneath the floorboard. And I got saved, and I had a 72 Camaro. I'll never forget it. We stopped by the Susquehanna River on the way out of church. I was so fired up. We got saved. I took a screwdriver that I carried, unscrewed those 3 Phillips head screws, took out that bag of cocaine, and dumped it in the Susquehanna River. 5 pounds. The street value was hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was mafia cocaine. It was cocaine that was given through the mob. It was cocaine that I got from somebody who was a policeman who was in the mob, who he had from other things. And I thought to myself afterwards, I did that, I got home, I thought, yikes, I'm dead. They're going to kill me. I don't have this money, and I just dumped the cocaine. And you know what I did? I started immediately testifying. When they kept harassing me, I started testifying over and over. And in my little city, I started testifying to everybody I knew. Men called me up for connections, men called me up for collections, and I started testifying. I had them all come to my house, testified to them, every single one. That was the thing that saved my life. Yeah. Because they thought I was so nuts, they thought I was so crazy that I was going to turn everybody in. So they left me alone. That does not happen. That does not happen. Why am I telling you that? Because I can remember the night I got saved. I never have forgotten that night. That was the night that God finally subdued me. And after that, just like you can see Jacob, I had to walk differently. I want to preach this to you, but I can't. I had to walk differently. because my nature still went with me. And when you get saved, your nature does not get taken away. If you were a gossip before you got saved, you're going to have trouble with gossip after you get saved. If you were an alcoholic, you're going to have trouble with alcoholism. Yeah, can God take it away? Sure, you can take it away like that. That doesn't mean you're not going to have any trouble with it.
That's right.
You're going to have to walk in your salvation. Jacob's going to have a little bit of trouble. I have to leave you here at this point, and let's just pray. Any questions at all? Man, I hope that you understand that God's pouring into your life through this Genesis study. And I'm so excited about the service this morning. Yes?
What's the answer to the question? I mean, so God can bless you, but what was the reason for the sacrifice? And
The sacrifice that Jacob made?
no, you said why does God require a sin offering and sacrifice?
Oh, very good. Why does God require a sin offering and sacrifice? Because it shows your intent. And what it does is it shows where your heart is. See, the Bible says where your treasure is, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be. And so whatever you can give up, and, you know, if you can't give something up in your life, then God's not Lord of all. See, so your offering is really saying, God, Jacob was desperate. He's saying, I've given my whole family up. He's sending his family and all of his wealth over. He's giving everything up so he can preserve his life. And our offering has to be, God, I'm willing to give everything up. There are very few people today that can do that can say that, or that can mean that. I will give everything. What if God calls me to Africa tomorrow? Will I be able to go and sell everything I have, be able to dissolve, in a sense, my friendships that I can see and go, well, I wrestled that down a long time ago, and yes, I will. You know, because I'm sold out. I'm totally sold out. That's a question, though, that will really not happen until the moment. So you're at that moment. Then will you do it? We could say a lot of things, but will you do it? So an offering is always showing your heart. Whatever you offer is showing your heart. You know, I've seen guys reach into their pockets to want to give money and fill out a $100 bill and say, "Oh, that's too much." Put it back in, and their heart was torn, and they probably shouldn't have given anything. Because if God has your heart, then you will give what God tells you to give, not what man tells you to give, what God tells you to give. So it's the intent of the heart. Where your heart is, where your abundance of treasure is, that's where your heart is. Wherever you speak about, whatever you think about, whatever, you know, that's where your heart is. That's the purpose of offering. It's good.